When I was 15, I never believed promises lasted forever. Emma and I were inseparable neighbors. Every afternoon, we raced our bicycles through the old park, climbed the giant oak tree behind the library, and dreamed about the lives we'd have someday. She wanted to become an architect. I wanted to own a small bookstore. One rainy afternoon, while hiding inside an abandoned gazebo, Emma pulled out a tiny notebook. "What if either of us gets married?" she asked, laughing. I shrugged. "Then we'll marry each other." She smiled, tore out a page, and wrote, "If we're both still single at 35, we'll get married. No excuses." We both signed it. She folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her wallet. "I'll keep it safe," she said. A year later, her father's job moved the family across the country. We promised to stay in touch. At first we did. Letters became emails. Emails became birthday texts. Eventually, nothing. Life moved on. I opened my bookstore exactly as I dreamed. Business was steady, but relationships never seemed to work. Every woman I dated eventually wanted something different from life. By the time my 35th birthday arrived, I was single. Ironically, friends planned a surprise party inside the bookstore after closing time. Music filled the room. People laughed. Someone handed me another slice of cake. Then the front bell rang. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the doorway wearing a navy blue dress, holding a small envelope. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. "Emma?" She smiled exactly the way she had 20 years ago. "You remembered my birthday. I never forgot." She walked slowly toward me. From the envelope, she removed a faded piece of folded paper. The edges were worn. The ink had faded. But I recognized it instantly. Our promise. The room became silent. "You kept it?" I whispered. "For 20 years." She unfolded it carefully. Our teenage signatures were still there. Everyone watched without speaking. Emma looked directly into my eyes. "I came because I promised I would." I laughed nervously. "You actually took this seriously?" "I always did." Before I could answer, she reached into her purse again. This time she pulled out something unexpected. An old photograph. It showed two teenagers sitting inside a gazebo, laughing as they signed the note. "I carried these everywhere," she said softly. I stared at the picture, overwhelmed. "So?" she asked with a nervous smile. "Does the promise still count?" Every person in the bookstore waited for my answer. I opened my mouth. But before a single word came out, the front door opened once more. A little girl ran inside shouting, "Mom!" She rushed straight toward Emma. And suddenly, nothing was as simple as it seemed. The little girl wrapped her arms around Emma's legs. "Mom, I found you!" Every eye in the bookstore shifted from Emma to the child, and then to me. A heavy silence settled over the room. I forced a smile, trying to hide the sting in my chest. "So, you got married after all?" Emma looked surprised. "What?" "No." She gently rested a hand on the girl's shoulder. "This is Lily." Lily waved shyly. "Hi." Emma took a slow breath before continuing. "She's my niece." I blinked. "My sister passed away 3 years ago. Since then, I've been raising Lily." The room seemed to exhale with me. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Most people assume she's my daughter," Emma replied. I stopped correcting them every time. My friends discreetly drifted away, giving us space to talk. We sat in a quiet corner of the bookstore where we used to read together as teenagers. For a few moments neither of us spoke. Finally I asked, "Why didn't you ever contact me?" Emma lowered her eyes. "I did." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small bundle of unopened envelopes tied with a faded blue ribbon. "I wrote to you every birthday." My heart skipped. I never got any letters. They all came back marked return to sender. Confused, I frowned. "I moved after college. I thought everyone knew." "I didn't." She smiled sadly. "I even visited this town once, But your old house had been sold. I thought you'd left and forgotten about me. I shook my head. I searched for you online, but there were hundreds of people with your name. For 20 years, we both believed the other had walked away. Neither of us had. Emma laughed softly through tears. Can you believe our entire story was almost erased because of bad timing? I couldn't help laughing too. Then she handed me the faded note again. I kept this because it reminded me that some promises deserve a second chance. Before I could answer, the bookstore door opened once more. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped inside. His eyes locked onto Emma. There you are, he said. I've been looking everywhere. Emma's smile disappeared. She stood slowly. You weren't supposed to find me. The man looked at me, then at the old promise in Emma's hand. His expression hardened. I'm afraid, he said calmly. There's something he deserves to know. And in that moment, I realized Emma hadn't told me the whole story. The bookstore fell silent as the man stepped closer. I'm Daniel, he said, extending his hand. Emma's attorney. Attorney? I looked at Emma, who sighed and nodded. It's okay, she whispered. He knows everything. Daniel turned to me. I'm sorry for interrupting, but this couldn't wait. He handed me a large envelope. Inside were legal documents and a handwritten letter. Emma looked down. My grandmother passed away 6 months ago, she said softly. She left me the family home, but only if I fulfilled one condition. What condition? Emma took a deep breath. I had to stop running from the people who mattered most. She smiled sadly. My grandmother knew about you. I told her our story years ago. She always believed unfinished promises leave unfinished hearts. Daniel added, she asked Emma to find you, not because of the promise to marry, but because she deserved to know whether your story truly had an ending. I looked at Emma. So, you didn't come here because you felt obligated? She shook her head immediately. No. Her eyes filled with tears. I came because every important chapter of my life somehow led back to you. She reached into her purse one last time. This time, she pulled out a tiny silver ring. Not an engagement ring. A simple ring with an oak tree engraved on it. The jeweler copied the tree behind the old library, she said with a smile. The place where we made impossible promises. I laughed through my tears. You planned all this? I hoped for it, she admitted. But I was terrified you'd tell me you'd moved on. I stepped closer. There was never anyone who made me feel the way you did. Lily tugged gently on my sleeve. Are you going to make my aunt smile again? Everyone laughed. I knelt beside her. I'll spend the rest of my life trying. When I stood, Emma was already crying. I took the faded note from her hand. The paper was worn, the ink barely visible, but the signatures remained. I folded it carefully and placed it in my pocket. That promise got us here, I said. But I'd rather make a new one. Taking Emma's hands in mine, I smiled. I don't want to marry you because of something we wrote at 15. I want to marry you because, after all these years, you're still the person I choose. Emma nodded, unable to speak. Instead, she kissed me as everyone in the bookstore burst into applause. Months later, we were married beneath the same old oak tree where 2 teenagers had once laughed over a silly promise. The faded note was framed at the entrance of our new home. Not as a contract, but as a reminder that some promises aren't about fate. They're about never giving up on the person who feels like home.